Currently, Earth. It was March 31st in the year 1776, in a letter dated on that date, that Abigail Adams writes to her husband John Adams, urging him and the other members of the Continental Congress not to forget about the nation's women when fighting for America's independence from Great Britain. The future First Lady wrote in part, quote, "I long to hear that you have declared an independency, and by the way, in the new code of laws, which I suppose it will be necessary for you to make, I desire you will remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Do not put such unlimited power into the hands of the husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. If particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to foment a rebellion and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or representation," unquote. Nearly 150 years before the House of Representatives voted to pass the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote, Adams' letter was a private first step in the fight for equal rights for women. Recognized and admired as a formidable woman in her own right, the union of Abigail and John Adams persists as a model of mutual respect and affection. They have since been referred to as America's first power couple. The correspondence of over 1,000 letters written between 1762 and 1801 remains in the Massachusetts Historical Society and continues to give historians a unique perspective on domestic and political life during the Revolutionary era. Abigail Adams bore 6 children, of whom 5 survived. Abigail and John's eldest son, John Quincy Adams, served as our nation's 6th president. Only 2 women, Abigail Adams and Barbara Bush, have been both wives and mothers of American presidents. It was March 31st in the year 1854 in Tokyo. Commodore Matthew Calabrese Perry, representing the U.S. government, signs the Treaty of Kanagawa with the Japanese government, opening the ports of Shimoda and Hakidote to American trade and permitting the establishment of a U.S. consulate in Japan. The other city may be Hakodate, didn't mean to butcher it. In July of 1853, Commodore Perry sailed into Tokyo Bay with a squadron of 4 U.S. vessels. For a time, Japanese officials refused to speak with Perry, but eventually they accepted letters from U.S. President Millard Fillmore, our nation's 13th president, making the United States the first Western nation to establish relations with Japan since it was declared closed to foreigners in 1683. After giving Japan time to consider the establishment of external relations, Perry returned to Tokyo in March of 1854, and on March 31st signed the Treaty of Kanagawa, which opened Japan to trade with the U.S. and thus the West. In April of 1860, the first Japanese diplomats to visit a foreign power reached Washington, D.C., and remained in the U.S. Capitol for several weeks discussing expansion of trade with our nation. It was March 31st in the year 1889 that the Eiffel Tower is dedicated in Paris in a ceremony presided over by Gustave Eiffel, the tower's designer, and attended by French Prime Minister Pierre Tirard, a handful of other dignitaries, and 200 construction workers. In 1889, to honor the centenary of the French Revolution, the French government planned an international exposition and announced a design competition for a monument to be built on the Champ de Mars in central Paris. Out of more than 100 designs submitted, the Centennial Committee chose Eiffel's plans of an open lattice wrought iron tower that would reach almost 1,000 feet above Paris and be the world's tallest man-made structure. Eiffel, a noted bridge builder, was a master of metal construction and designed the framework of the Statue of Liberty that had been recently erected in New York Harbor. Eiffel's tower was greeted with skepticism from critics who argued that it would be structurally unsound, and indignation from others who thought it would be an eyesore in the heart of Paris. Unperturbed, Eiffel completed his great tower under budget in 2 years. Only one worker continued his eternity during construction, which at the time was a remarkably low casualty number for a project of that magnitude. The light, airy structure was by all accounts a technological wonder, and within a few decades came to be regarded as an architectural masterpiece. The Eiffel Tower is 984 feet tall and consists of an iron framework supported on 4 masonry piers, from which rise 4 columns that unite to form a single vertical tower. I'm going to keep it on here for last because no one watches these fucking videos yet anyway. If they do later, then remind me. Platforms, each with an observation deck, are at 3 levels. Elevators ascend the piers on a curve, and Eiffel contracted the oldest elevator company of the United States to design the tower's famous glass cage elevators. The elevators were not completed by March 31st in 1889, however, so Gustave Eiffel ascended the tower's stairs with a few hardy companions and raised an enormous French tricolor on the structure's flagpole. Fireworks were then set off from the second platform. Eiffel and his party descended, and the architect addressed the guests and about 200 workers. In early May, the Paris International Exposition opened, and the tower served as the entrance gateway to the giant fair. The Eiffel Tower remained the world's tallest man-made structure until the completion of the Chrysler Building in New York in 1930. Incredibly, the Eiffel Tower was almost demolished when the International Exposition's 20-year lease on the land expired in 1909, but its value as an antenna for radio transmission saved it. It remains largely unchanged today and is one of the world's premier tourist attractions. The historic information developed on this audio file can be verified on History.com.